In this step of our walk through a corner search survey, let's take a look at calibrating the field data that we collected with our GNSS receiver to our record data. So we've collected all these points that you see for the corners here, and let's take a look at what we do next. If you remember in a previous video, I pulled out an earlier copy of this and said we entered all of the information for lot 19 and the lots around it as a traverse, and we put those at 5,000, 5,000, and then we went out and tied those. Now when we tied them in the handheld app that looks just like this. I'm running Emlid Flow 360 in a web browser, but the Emlid Flow is a mobile app that runs on your iOS or Android, and it looks just like this. And I simply went up and said I want to export those as a CSV. So all those ties to the corners I exported as a CSV. And let's come over here and just take a look at that real quick. Remember I said I've got a research folder, I've also got a data folder, which is where I put all those. So in the field I said let's go ahead and export those. I called them Susan Allen Found Pin CSV. Just take a look at that real quick so you can see what it looks like here. We'll open that in Notepad. Turn off the word wrap. And here are my points, 6, 7, 8, 9. You can see the codes that are there for those. And I've got then the pound L6, that's the tie to the record corner. My RMS values are in here, all the information I had. Remember I had a couple at one point with real high RMS values, 7 feet by 2 feet. And I called that one, that point label for that one 22 float, so I would recognize it when I imported it. So let's go ahead and import this file. Remember I did all of this right out there in the field, not back in the office. And let's tell Traverse PC that I want to import an Emlid CSV file. And I've got some settings here that say I'm going to bring in both fixed and float. I don't normally bring in float, but remember on the south end here, I had 2 fixed points, and my third point I could only get with a float. So I am going to bring that in. I'm going to do the details so I can see what I'm actually bringing in. And let's go ahead and browse to that. I'm going to go back to my data folder. And this is the file where I exported the pins. I also exported the points online that I eventually set. So that's this other file. Let's import this. Tell Traverse PC to bring it in. Now, Traverse PC says I haven't set a coordinate reference system, so I need to select one now. So we're going to go ahead and tell Traverse PC we're going to do NAD 83, the 2011 epoch, and I'm in the Oregon South zone. Let's come down to Oregon South. Let's do geoid. So we get those close. We'll do 12B. Okay, now it's going to go ahead and import all of our data. Let's just take a look at what we did here. So here's the date and the file name. And then for each point, I'm primarily interested in these RMS values. So here's my centimeter by a centimeter, just like I saw on the data collector. And when I get down to 22 float, right here, there I've got the larger RMS value. So I'm pretty sure that's a point I'm not going to want to keep. Okay, but the rest of them are within 2 centimeters at the most, centimeter and a half for some, and a centimeter for the rest. So I'm looking pretty good. Now those all came in to this traverse right here. And I'm going to open this up and display it as Control 3D. And I'm going to label or draw those as imported points. Let's OK that. And now I can see right away I've got my description in here. And you see that point 6, which was my GNSS point, has this pound L6 in the description. That relates the points for my calibration. First I want to come into this 22 float, and let's get rid of that. We just don't need that one. Now let's go up to our calibration menu. We're going to create a calibration, and in particular we want to use this middle option here that says select a traverse of uncalibrated points. So I'm going to select this traverse I'm looking at, and the points are in description, delineated by, I used a pound, but you can specify any character. And then I want to reverse this. I want the uncalibrated points in the side shot or in a point description. So I want the uncalibrated, the 5,000, 5,000 points in the description, because I'm going to calibrate this whole 5,000 survey to my NAD 83 position. So let's go ahead and create that out of that traverse. Traverse BC does that. I'm just going to look quick. Here's my rotation, 2 degrees 15 minutes clockwise. That's about what I expect on in this location on that NAD 83. I've got very small scaling. I'm just above sea level, so I don't expect much on that. Depends on what the geoid's doing there. And then these huge translations here. And I can see that point L6 is going from 5,045 to 992,444, NAD 83 coordinate. So I'm going to come in and say, yeah, I want to save this. I'm going to go from local site to my survey CRS. And I'm going to save this. Now I'm going to put these all in that data here. And you can see I've got the one I stored earlier. I'm going to call this one Susan Allen Local to GNSS. I like the file name to tell me what it's doing as far as the direction of it. So let's save that. Good. Now let's go ahead and calibrate our survey. Remember, our GNS points are at a million. This is still at 5,000, 5,000. And you can choose to calibrate the GNSS points to your local, or I'm going to go from local to my GNSS points. So I'm going to do the entire survey. It's already selected that calibration. Remember, the file name tells me it's local to GNSS. Everything else is the same. Let's just calibrate. So Traverse PC is going through all the data in that survey and calibrating everything up to the GNS positions. Now watch what happens when we tag this traverse. I'm going to zoom in here for you. See my 0.7? First one I tied in the neighbor's yard was 6, 7, 8. Came across and did 10, 12. And then we came down to the southern end down here. We tied 35 on the east line. We tied 20, 21, and 22. And remember, I threw out that float value.